right, and good afternoon. This is Margaret LOCKLEAR coming to you from the Great Blacks in Wax. And today we have Thomas Saunders, who's with Renaissance Production and Tours, African American Heritage Tours, and he's the special coordinator for that program. Tom, tell us a little bit about Renaissance Production.
Well, Renaissance Production started in 1990. And the purpose of Renaissance Production was to expose visitors to Baltimore to the rich African-American history that we have here. And one of the wax figures that we have behind us is directly responsible for that tour. We began our company by giving the original black landmarks to Baltimore City, and that was created by the late Dr. Thelma Banks Cox.
Okay. Tell us a little bit more about Ms. Cox.
Well, Dr. Cox served as the Assistant Superintendent of Baltimore City Public Schools, and she was also the founder of the African American Heritage Society. And she was a supporter of the Great Blacks in Wax. The late Dr. Elmer Martin used to tell a story about when he met this older woman, and she gave him a little check, and he let it sit on his bureau for several days, even a couple of weeks. And finally, when he looked at the check, he thought she had given him a contribution of $30, and when he double checked, it was for $3,000.
Oh, wow.
And it came from the late Dr. Thelma Banks Cox. She really put a lot of energy in trying to create an Afrocentric curriculum for Baltimore City Public Schools. She thought if the black kids knew their heritage, that would build their self-esteem and make them better achievers. And here we are 26 years later, and finally the state is recognizing that by introducing a new Afrocentric curriculum.
Okay, so tell us what the Renaissance Tours, what are they promoting in your tours?
Okay, on the tours, some of our black landmarks that we promote, we generally begin our tour at the NAACP National Headquarters.
Okay.
And because it is the national headquarters, makes it a natural destination. And people want to come here and they want to see the room and they want to meet Kwesi Mfume. There at the NAACP, we tour the conference facility. We also visit the grave of Dorothy Parker. Dorothy Parker was a Jewish woman, a noted playwright, and in her will, she left her estate to Martin Luther King, and in the will had a condition, and one of the conditions was if Martin Luther King died, then the money would go to the NAACP. So anybody that uses Dorothy Parker's material today, the royalties go to the NAACP, and that's one way that they raise funds.
Okay, amazing. So tell us exactly what your function is.
My function is the president and CEO of Renaissance Productions and Tours. And so basically it's my job to create these venues. Some of the places that you wouldn't think of as a tourist attraction, we have been able to go in and to make them tourist attractions because they are authentic landmarks of Baltimore. Places such as the Orchard Street Church. Okay. Orchard Street Church is our home of the Underground Railroad here in Baltimore.
Exactly, that's where Harriet Tubman led folks to the north?
Not exactly. The two conductors of the Orchard Street Church were Truman Pratt and Basil Hall. Okay. But we have an actress who portrays Harriet Tubman because she is a native Marylander and people want to see her. Okay. And then there's a legendary tunnel there at the church.
And do people get to go through the tunnel?
They don't actually go through the tunnel, but they go in the sub-basement in the furnace area and they see the legendary heating duct, and so they take a look inside before coming to the sanctuary for Miss Day's presentation. Okay. Also on the tour, we have the St. Francis Academy, and the St. Francis Academy is the oldest African-American to continuously operating school in the United States. Even though they were earlier schools, no school has stayed in business that long in the African-American community. The school was started in 1828 and is still operating right here in East Baltimore at 501 East Chase Street.
I see your passion is just as great as Ms. Cox about keeping the history alive. Give us some other examples of what sites that are available.
Well, we have the Sharp Street Church. Okay. The Sharp Street Church dates back to 1802. And Morgan State University was started in the basement of the church as the Centenary Biblical Institute in 1867. And so Sharp Street is known for its involvement in the civil rights movement. The Mitchells were very active in the Sharp Street Church. Lily Carl Jackson was very active. And so in their archives, you see all the famous people that attended Sharp Street, starting with Frederick Douglass. And in the archives, they have his crystal mugs on display. And Frederick Douglass actually sang in the choir of the church at one time.
Is that amazing? amazing.
Yes, it is. So we have all of this rich history. One of our other locations would be the Union Baptist Church.
Okay.
Union Baptist Church dates back to 1852.
Amazing.
And the church has been known for its civil rights activity. One of the pastors, Harvey Johnson, you know they have a Harvey Johnson Center located there. The Head Start program is named after Harvey Johnson. Harvey Johnson was an advisor to W.E.B. Du Bois.
I didn't know.
And he advised him on the formation of the Niagara movement, which eventually became the NAACP. And he worked with two other Baltimore pastors, Reverend Diggs and Reverend Waller from the Trinity Baptist Church. And so the Union Baptist Church is on our tour. Its current pastor, the Reverend Vernon Dobson, was active in the modern civil rights movement of the 60s.
Right, I remember Reverend Dobson. I worked with him in the civil rights movement myself.
Another place on the tour, we have the President Street Station. The President Street Station was a former train station.
Okay.
And it serves as the Baltimore City Civil War Museum, but recently it was designated as an official site on the Underground Railroad. That's because Henry Box Brown actually came through the President Street Station.
I didn't know that. I thought he was just to New York.
No, he was shipped from Virginia by the Adams Express Company, and at the time there was a train station near what is now Camden Yards.
Okay.
And so the train would come south there, and then you would have to make a transfer at the President Street Station. From there, that train would take you north to Delaware and then on to Philadelphia.
Okay, so at that station, do you have someone there as well that acts as Henry Box Brown?
Absolutely. One of the things that Renaissance Productions has done, we now make history come to life.
Excellent.
We use actors throughout the city, and so you can see Henry Box Brown on the tour. You can see Harriet Tubman. You can see Thurgood Marshall. And when we go past Douglas Place, and those are 5 houses located down in the Fells Point area on Dallas Street.
Okay.
Frederick Douglass steps on your tour bus and gives you his life's history and his experience here in Baltimore.
So on this tour, people are allowed to talk to these actors?
Absolutely.
Ask some questions about their history? And
Absolutely. All the actors are well versed in their character, and these are all Baltimore characters, and you can see them throughout the city. We've just added a Lily Carl Jackson. And Lily Carl Jackson was the mother of civil rights in Baltimore.
Yes, definitely.
And so she headed the NAACP for over 30 years, and her daughter, Juanita Mitchell, became the first African-American female attorney from the state of Maryland. She married Clarence Mitchell Jr., who became the 101st senator. That's what we referred him to. And the courthouse downtown is named in his honor. Okay.
How can the community get involved or become a part of this tour?
Well, then people need to call us at 410-728-3837 if you're considering taking a tour, or if you would like to work as a docent on the tour, give us a call. Twice a year we have training programs for the docents.
Excellent. Okay. We'll flash that number up for you if you want to get in touch with Mr. Saunders about becoming a part of the tour or actually going on the tour. And we'll have those numbers, and we'll be right back.
Years and became the Register of Wills, and he came back to this area that he had been a slave, and he built these 5 houses for the people. And so if you look up in the brick, you will see Douglas Place, and these 5 houses, starting with this one with the historic plaque, these were built by Frederick Douglass. Now let me just run around the corner to see if we have a guest here.
It's your
my great-great-grandfather.
Okay,
Yes.
giving family stories that were passed down in the family that maybe weren't, commonly known about.
Well, I think most of the stories that we've passed down more and more have to do with how much abuse that he had to take. He really didn't talk about the personal abuse that he had to take, but many times when he made speeches, he was actually attacked. At Sandal Hall in Boston, he was attacked, or many times when he would be walking down the street with something like William Lloyd Garrison and Susan B. Anthony. He really took a lot of personal abuse.
And welcome back. Tom, explain to us what docents are.
Well, docents are the people who interpret history for us.
Okay.
And so then we have a docent and tour guide training program, and so we're always hiring people to serve as receptive operators for the larger companies from New York and Philadelphia.
Okay.
So when the tour buses come in, our tour guides step on the bus and take them throughout Baltimore, and they show them the rich history. The way that our tour is designed, everywhere you turn, there's something related to the African American community. And even for places that you wouldn't consider being black landmarks,
Okay.
we give you our black interpretation of the place. For example, the Peale Museum.
Okay, explain.
People know about
Okay.
Rembrandt Peale, and they consider the Peale Museum one of the earliest art museums in the United States. But that building became City Hall, and once City Hall moved to its present location, the school was turned over to the Color School Administration, making it the first public school for blacks in Baltimore City. So it's a lot of things that have some reference to African Americans, just like the President Street Station, where people look at it as the Civil War Museum. When we talk about black history, we talk about the blacks that were mailed to freedom from that train station. And so all throughout Baltimore is a rich history. Pratt Street, for example, some refer to that as the Trail of Tears.
Okay, and there is a separate tour with that, or is that?
This is all a part of the tour. I'm saying the Black Landmarks tour encompasses stopping at some of these places, and also we have a lot of drive-bys. You know, places like the Prince Hall Masonic Lodge, and you see Prince Hall here at the Great Blacks in Wax. Lily Carl Jackson's house is a drive-by, and we also pick up streets named after African Americans, like McMecken Street.
Okay.
Named after George McMecken, the first black graduate of what was then Morgan College.
Oh, I see.
And then on Madison Avenue, we have the Monumental Lodge number 3. That's the oldest black Elks building in the United States. And at the time when they moved to that location in 1926, George P. McMecken was the Grand Exalted Ruler.
And these are Freemasons?
No, these are the Elks.
The Elks,
Mhm,
okay.
These are the Elks, Monumental Lodge number 3. And obviously there's a difference between the black Elks and the white Elks, but these are the black Elks.
Okay.
And also we have the Trinity Baptist Church. Trinity Baptist Church was founded in 1888.
Okay.
And so all of its pastors have had PhDs. Reverend Diggs and Reverend Waller worked with W.E.B. Du Bois as well as Harvey Johnson from Union Baptist in the formation of the Niagara Movement, which eventually became the NAACP.
Right.
And then also on the tour we have the Henry Holland Garnett Park. There's no wax figure in the museum for him yet, but Henry Holland Garnett was one of the most famous orators from the state of Maryland. He was born in 1815 on Maryland's Eastern Shore, and early on his family escaped slavery.
Okay.
And so then he was educated in New York, and he's famous for the address to the slaves of the United States. And here in Baltimore, every February, we have a reenactment of the Negro Convention of 1843, and the address to the slaves of the United States is written. It's a powerful speech, and I guess one of the outstanding clauses in the speech is, "'Tis better to be dead than be a slave."
Okay, this is a new one for me because I had never heard of this. When does this occur?
This occurs in February. It's always the last Friday in February, and it's a part of what we call the Grand Tour. Now, the Grand Tour is a little different from our regular Black Landmarks Tour. During the Grand Tour, we bring in teams of horses, and we convert blocks back to whatever period we're trying to create. So the Henry Holland Garnett Negro Convention takes place on Druid Hill Avenue at the corner of Druid Hill and Lafayette in the Henry Holland Garnett Park, and we roll the time back to 1843. So what you see are the free blacks that would have lived in that neighborhood, and you see the slaves.
Okay.
And you see, of course, the people who would have lived in the bigger houses. At that time, all of those houses were occupied by whites, wealthy whites, and the black servants and the white servants lived in the alleys.
Yeah, what the Pratt Street Trail of Tears, what exactly occurs there? And what would people find when they come to?
Well, we haven't reenacted the Trail of Tears as of yet, but we point out that Pratt Street was known as the Trail of Tears for African Americans in Baltimore. Some refer to that as that because of the omnibuses. Hope Slater was a notorious slave trader here in the Baltimore area, and he created one of the first forms of mass transit, which was the omnibus, a steel cage on wheels. And so they would take the Baltimore slaves and put them in these steel cages and roll them down Pratt Street to the inner harbor. They would be placed on boats that would take them to the larger slave ships. And one of the greatest fears around here was being sold to the South. If you look at the old letters, for some reason, the people just feared being sold to Georgia. But just being a field slave was just very scary for the people, because these people lived in the little alley streets, and they would service to big houses, and so basically they were house slaves.
Right, wasn't that an incident that had occurred to Frederick Douglass, having lived down in that portion of Baltimore?
Well, Frederick Douglass, Frederick Douglass, I don't know whether he was a part of the Trail of Tears, but I'm sure he was there to witness the people in the omnibuses and that type thing. But Frederick Douglass mainly lived in the Fells Point section of Baltimore,
right,
on a street called Philpott is what he referred to in his autobiography. Now, Frederick Douglass first came to Baltimore as a child, as a 5-year-old child, to be one of the playmates for the All family. He was on loan to Hugh All by Hugh All's brother from the Eastern Shore, and so it was here in Baltimore that he learned to read and write by being the playmate of Hugh All's son.
Okay.
So then Frederick Douglass was sent back to the Eastern Shore, where he was conditioned and seasoned to become a slave.
Okay.
And so then he worked as a field slave there, later returning to Baltimore to be hired out by the Alls in Baltimore shipyard.
Okay.
And so Frederick Douglass had like a degree of freedom. At one time he had his own apartment until he didn't report to the All. But one of the incidents that happened here in Baltimore is once the Irish immigrants came in, Frederick Douglass wrote of an incident where he was attacked in the shipyard and someone kicked him in his eye so hard with the boot that he thought his eye had exploded. Hugh All took him to the court magistrate, and he wanted these men tried for damaging Frederick Douglass. But Frederick Douglass was only the only witness, and at the time, a black man could not testify against a white man, so the case was thrown out of court.
Okay. I want to get back to the Trail of Tears again. Is there a problem with you conducting that tour because of the painful memory behind that? Or
I mean, it's just so hard to restage. I mean, I would have to, inexpensive, because I would have to get these steel cages on wheels, you know, to reenact that. So basically what I've been doing is just telling people what it meant to us, but maybe we will reenact that one day.
Right, because sometimes it's better to know where you come from, know where you're going.
Absolutely.
So people need to be reminded of that.
Okay, and I think that would make a powerful statement, but that's one of the things that we haven't done. But we do reenact an actual slave auction.
Oh, you do?
Yes.
And where's that held?
We had that, the last time we had, just because of the background, it wasn't an official site, but we had it outside of the Curl Mansion during the Grand Tour, you know, as a location, but that is an official site. That wasn't a slave auction site here in Baltimore, but there are several sites, and it would be located near the markets.
Okay. Are you thinking about setting up that again this year?
Yeah, we have all the props, and I'm sure that the slave auction will be on the Grand Tour. Now, one of the things, the auction is so emotional. You know, not only for the producer, but for some of the people that's driving along the street. And during the Grand Tour, everything is so colorful, the reenactment and everything is so theatrical that people just stop their cars. But I see that slave auction generated so much emotion till one year we moved it inside of the former Lafayette Market that's now the Avenue Market.
Okay. Well, we'll be right back.
And these houses are being restored. Just a couple of blocks away from Pennsylvania Avenue is Fulton Avenue, and that was a dividing line for African Americans in Baltimore City. No blacks lived west of Fulton Avenue until after World War II. And here on Pennsylvania Avenue, this is where the black businesses were located, black-owned businesses, and businesses that catered to African Americans. Black landmark, this is the Art Social Club, which was founded in 1912, making it the oldest black men's social club in the state of Maryland. And during the days of segregation, all along here were the black businesses.
Okay, welcome back. We're talking with Tom Saunders, who's with Renaissance Production and Tours, African American Heritage Tours Coordinator. Tom, give us a little more about what the tour offers.
Okay, and we also visit some of the night spots, you know, during the day and during the evening. Okay. And one of the popular spots is the Art Social Club. And the Art Social Club was established in 1912, making it the oldest black men's social club in the state of Maryland. And so during the day on our tour, we conduct jazz workshops there. Dr. Rupert Stone, who created the jazz workshops at Howard University, he conducts the jazz workshops at the Art Social Club. And also we have jazz performances and blues performances, and we use some of the local musicians there. In the evening, the Art Socialists stop on the nightlife tour. And in Baltimore City, you have to know your clubs and where to go. I don't think you can have a good time if you don't have a tour guide.
Exactly.
So we highlight these places on the tour. The tour also takes in the St. Peter Claver Church. Now that's what I'm really excited about. St. Peter Claver is the patron saint of slaves, and the church here in Baltimore is the first church built in honor of this patron saint of slaves, who was St. Peter Claver. And on the wall there, they highlight Father Uncles. Father Uncles became the first African American priest ordained in the United States. And in terms of Catholicism, Baltimore has all the firsts. You know, Baltimore has many firsts in terms of every subject, but in terms of Catholicism in the black community, we have all the firsts. We have the first African-American Catholic congregation, St. Francis Xavier, that dates back to 1793, located here in East Baltimore. Then we have the first black nuns in the world, the Oblate Sisters of Providence. Even though the school started in 1828, the nuns date back to 1829, and its foundress was Mother Mary Lang. Currently, she's being investigated by the Vatican in order to become the first African-American saint. So we have all this in Baltimore: Father Uncles, Mother Mary Lang, the St. Francis Xavier Church, and the St. Peter Claver Church, all the first. And maybe we'll build a shrine for St. Peter Claver one day here.
That would be great.
So what else can we talk about? Also on the tour, some of the other historic churches, you know, we have a church tour, you know, where we take in the Bethel AME Church. The Bethel dates back to 1795, and I understand that its founder, Daniel Coker, was actually nominated to become the first bishop of the AME Church. He declined and it went to Richard Allen of Philadelphia. And so then we've heard of Mother Bethel in Philadelphia, but Daniel Coker was an outstanding man. And so they all started in the Methodist Church, because the Methodist religion started here in Baltimore, but the more militant people broke away from the Sharp Street United Methodist Church, and they became part of the AME Church. So Baltimore just has a rich history in all the various congregations and everything that we have here. In terms of the Baptists, here in East Baltimore, we have the First Baptist Church, dates back to 1836. Now this really excites me. Its founder, Moses Clayton, I consider him the greatest activist in Baltimore's black history. Moses Clayton was from Southampton County, Virginia, where Nat Turner's from. And when he came here to Baltimore as a minister, he organized the First Baptist Church. And his church has been around since 1836. And one of the things that he did, when he found out that the black-owned homeowners were paying their tax money, but yet they could not receive public education. You know, whites received public education in Baltimore in the 1830s, blacks not until 1865. And so he organized the black homeowners, and he said they should stop paying taxes until they could receive the services. So he was one of the hell raisers around here.
The father of activism.
Yeah, the father of activism. And so, like Henry Holland Garnett, you know, after delivering the address to the slaves of the United States, they became so alarmed around here that they were sending people back to Africa. And we had a Back to Africa movement back in the 1830s.
And this is prior to the Marcus Garvey.
Absolutely. He's known as the father of modern black nationalism. But in Baltimore, people went back to Africa. It was like all the hellraisers were sent back to Africa. Henry Holland Garnett was an ambassador to Africa. And so several people went to Africa from Baltimore. And the Maryland General Assembly passed a law that if you would go back to Africa, they would set you free. There's a section in Liberia called Maryland. President Tolbert, his grandchildren traced their roots back to Baltimore City. And so when we premiered Africans in America, President Tolbert's granddaughter was here, so we got that information.
That is amazing.
And she's making me laugh like I don't know what. But the thing is, you got to put everything in context. When Moses Clayton led this rebellion here in Baltimore, and as an activist, remember he was from Southampton County, the same place Nat Turner was. Nat Turner was leading the slave raids, and they thought that would spill over into Maryland.
Okay.
And so the people were paranoid, and so they decided it was enough black people around here, and some needed to go back to Africa.
Little cleansing.
Right, so the Back to
ethnic
Africa movement
cleansing.
starts here with the American Colonization Society.
Well, that's amazing. You are really filled with history. I mean,
Yes, and if you want to hear another anecdote, Druid Hill Park, that was the plantation.
Okay.
And that was the plantation. The mansion house is still there. But, when it became a public park in the 1800s, because you read about the people who drove in their horse carriages on their way to Pimlico to the Preakness.
okay.
But one of the things is they gave the blacks a pool. They asked the blacks to clean the park, and so that they gave them a pool. The old colored pool used to be behind where the zoo is located. And the black community was so proud of the pool, they painted it. They just kept it in excellent condition and understand it was better than the white pool. So then the black community came together and they petitioned to have a dance in the pavilion like the white people of Baltimore. Those pavilions that you see,
Right.
people would hang the lanterns and they would come on the horse carriages, and that's where the dances would take place. They petitioned the park board to have a dance, and they were denied. That was enough that they had given them a pool. So guess what they did? They drained the pool. Drained the pool, built some steps, and they had to dance down in the
mercy.
swimming pool.
Oh, wow. Well,
So anyway, as a historian, we learn all of these things about the black community, and you learn different terminology. I'm saying just like the word Brown Town, for all of these little segregated pockets of Maryland and outside of Baltimore,
yeah.
now the areas were referred to as Brown Town. And so I just learned that maybe like a few years ago, but that was a white term. Like East Towson was
Okay.
referred to as Brown Town, where the Poly-Western complex is, that was referred to as Brown Town by the people of Hamden.
okay.
And so you learn something new every day.
Yeah, I'm learning something new just today, and you've been an amazing guest. I've learned so much, and I'm now even more curious about our history. And,
Right, and you should take the tour. Throughout the tour, we have all interesting stories, and one of the things is that the tour is interactive. Now, when Baltimoreans go on the tour, throughout the tour, they can add little pieces about what they know.
Okay.
We've done the tour for educators, like the late Dr. Pearl Brackett went on the tour, and where the school headquarters is located, one section used to be the Poly Auditorium. Okay. And so that's the place where Marian Anderson performed, for Delta Sigma Theta, and Pearl Brackett was the organizer. She was shocked that I knew that. So one of the things when the older Baltimoreans get on the bus, I like to tell little stories about them and the little firsts that they did, so that they see everybody has made a contribution. And that's what I believe that needs to happen in a city, is everybody has to have everybody must have worth.
Exactly. But thank you for coming.
Okay.
And we must do this again and again, as I say. If you want to be a part of this tour, you give Tom Saunders a call.
Right.
At
Renaissance Productions and Tours. Give me a call at 410-728-3837. And that's 410-728-3837.
And thank you for
And thank you for having me as your guest. I love your show.
I love you.